Surrender your Doritos?
Oh, goody. You boys can read. Cool Ranch, my favorite. Someone is loving me with Doritos. Little sheep, little sheep. We're the legends born so long ago. Keep on living each time they're told. And where they still make cranberry wine, that's where I'm taking you, down the pines, where folks still working time-honored ways. In this episode of Down the Pines, I'm spending time with Niki and Gary Giberson of Port Republic, New Jersey, where Gary has been mayor for 33 years.
You give me a countdown. 1, 2, 3.
And Gary's family traces back to 9 generations. The Gibersons own and operate Swan Bay Folk Art Center, where they share hands-on craft making. Niki teaches spinning, weaving, quilt making, felting, knitting, and more. And all the wool comes from their sheep farm. And Gary invites me into his carving studio, showing me some of his signature techniques that make him a celebrated and sought-after decoy maker who's known all over the world. What turtle story do you have?
Well, it's coming up. It's right around the corner. Loggerhead Storm.
And Gary's got a great idea for a song he wants us to work on. I'm Paul Pedersen, and I'm taking you down the pines.
That's where I'm taking you, down the pines. Down the pines, where cedar water flows.
Little sheep! Little sheep! Come on!
The gang's all here.
Yeah.
I heard that if after you shear the sheep, the baby sheep can't find the mother?
The baby sheep do not recognize their mother because they don't look the same and they don't smell the same for about 2.5 hours.
Wow.
The babies are trying to nurse off another mom, and the mom kicks them away until she is feeding her own baby. She won't feed someone else's baby.
Huh.
So it's really neat how that works.
Kind of throws a household into chaos.
It does. It really does.
Vinegar?
Little vinegar, that's going to set the color.
We met each other drunk as we could be.
So I guess this is where we come up with the saying, it's dyed in the wool.
Exactly.
Dyed
Actually,
in the wool. Oh, look at the red. That's great.
dyed in the wool actually means before it's spun. Before you spin the wool, you dye it.
Okay.
This has already been spun, this wool. It's already yarn.
And where do the dyes come from?
A lot of times they come from plants.
Okay.
Traditionally they came from plants. The only problem is in South Jersey, any plant that you would get that you would use for dye would end up being an earth tone, like browns and greens and yellows. There was no red, no blue, no purple that grew around here. But the cool thing is all the colors blend together. They always look good together. They never clash. But if you were royalty, that's why you wore purple or red or blue.
Ah.
Because you had to be rich to get those dyes from across the ocean.
Cool, that's a delicious looking
Isn't
color.
that lovely?
Now what is that, cranberry or?
It's called Egyptian red.
Egyptian
That's
red.
the name of the color, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna take this out.
Now how long have they been doing this here in South Jersey? I mean, probably since what, the 1600s, right?
Oh, as soon as they came. Because in England, they had laws in England saying that you couldn't bring spinning wheels, looms, or sheep into this country. So the people here in America, in order to become independent, knew that if they didn't start making their own clothes, that they would need England forever.
I've always wanted to ask you, what got you into carving ducks?
As a duck hunter, we had a beautiful set of decoys that I gunned with my father and my grandfather, and our decoys disappeared off the sneak box.
A sneak box is a small boat that can be sailed, rowed, poled, or sculled. It is predominantly associated with the Barnegat Bay in New Jersey, and typically used for hunting waterfowl, and usually built of Atlantic white cedar wood.
And so my father went over to Marine Mart in Atlantic City and bought a dozen decoys.
Okay.
There was no plastics or corks or styrofoams at the time, still wooden decoys.
Right.
Probably in the mid 40s or early 50s.
Okay.
And he brought these decoys home. They had great big bodies and little teeny heads. And I said to my dad, "Dad, they'll scare more birds than they'll attract," you know?
So when you start carving a duck, you start from a pattern?
Yes, you get some kind of a characteristic. Every species of duck has a different character.
Okay.
A merganser is fast and racy. I wanted to do something a little different than the Jersey style, and I call these my vineyard, Martha's Vineyards mergansers. They have carved raised wings. The wings were raised high. These are solid body. They're made out of white pine. It was something new for me. And mean. When I draw them, I can actually put an eyebrow over the eye and lean it forward to bring that meanness and that character to that carving. Hear that chatter? You don't want that to chatter.
How many different species of ducks can you carve?
There's 23 different species that fly the Atlantic flyway.
Okay.
And one collector who's great, he walked into my shop and he said, "You're Gary Giberson. Can you carve me one of every species that flies the flyway?" And I said, "Wow, you know, that's a lot of ducks. That's a lot of money, you know." But I did. I carved 23.
Is that right? He's got the whole set.
He's got the whole set.
How many people have the whole set?
He's the only one that I know of. I don't even have a whole set.
Wow.
This is a pattern for a brant, very, very goose-like duck, you know, a little smaller than goose. And you can see in the back I have a swimming head tilted forward, and here's another pattern for another head, drawn right on the same pattern.
Right.
I lay this on the wood because decoys are made uniquely in two pieces. Loggerhead Storm. The first thunderstorm in June is called the Loggerhead Storm.
Okay.
Some interesting things happen with this first thunderstorm in June. Number one, the laurel blooms.
Really?
Deer drop their young in the laurel bushes. Why do you think they drop their young in laurel bushes? So the predators cannot smell the birthing.
Wow.
Deer drop their young.
The deer drop their young.
It's cool, wouldn't it? And the deer drop their young.
Among the fragrant blooming bush.
Fragrant. When the laurel blooms full and the deer drop their young. When the laurel blooms full and the deer drop their young, hidden by the scent of the blooms.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Hidden by the scent of the blooms.
Love it.
There's clear water coming out of it. See that?
Yeah. That means the dye is in the wool.
It's in the wool forever, yep.
All right.
Not going to come out. That's a pretty color.
It'll last forever, will it?
It should. It should.
Okay.
I'm just going to hang it up here. Let it air dry. Once again, not really agitating it a whole lot. You don't want to...
How long does it dry for?
Well, it all depends on the wind and the sun and, you know, nature drying it. It's kind of when you hang your clothes on the line. It may take a long time, may take no time at all. What I'm doing is I'm taking the wool that's already been washed and already been brushed and ready to spin, and I'm feeding it in, and my feet are deciding how fast I'm going to spin, and my fingers decide how thick the wool is going to be. So I can make it super thin or I can make it fat.
What gives wool its strength?
Well,
Like these are, it looks like it's real fine fibers. What gathers them and makes them strong so you can make clothes out of them?
wool is an amazing product. It really is. It's coming from sheep. It's renewable, so once a year you can get more.
Sure.
But what's in it is something called keratin, which is in hooves and the fingernails and their horns. Now I'm going to teach you to spin, okay?
Oh boy.
All right?
Okay.
Now, you don't have to worry about your hands in the beginning. Because in the beginning, you just have to be able to pedal without thinking about it.
Okay.
Okay?
We had a cedar sawmill on our property. My grandfather ran a sawmill, so I had plenty of wood to work with. Grandpa would save good wood for me.
What kind of cedar do you use?
It's Atlantic white cedar.
Atlantic white cedar.
The pieces were literally hollowed, Paul. I'll show you how they scoop them out. To hollow them, I just use a gouge. Can you hand me that one with the tennis ball on there? Look at this. I came up with the idea of putting a tennis ball. It keeps my chisel, my gouge nice and sharp, but then I can put it on this end, and it's a cushion.
There you go.
And I carve. And what you have to do here when you're carving, you cut in there and raise that up, and then you come in from the opposite direction because of those grain lines. You're picking up those grain lines, and you pick up that same area. And of course, when you glue, you use clamping and pressure to hold them together. But the two pieces, the bottom and the top, are hollow, lighter and more buoyantly, more action on the water. Also, a lot lighter, more like moving on the water, and lighter to carry on the back of a small boat, such as a sneak box. I use a straight cut in the top of the bill. I follow the back of the nostril with the line of the bill here, and bring it to a point in the front. That's sort of my signature. If I go like this, it's hard, but if I tilt that knife back like that, it's so much easier. And I found a unique thing too that I've tried to teach all of my students. When you have the pattern and locate the eye, and the eye position is very important on any animal that you're making, and you draw a straight line from the top of the bill to the back of the head, and you divide this line into 3 equal portions, and when the head is still on a flat stage like this, I locate that eye and locate the size of the eye, and then I drill the hole all the way through, and this way I always have a balanced eye. I want to cut a line down here right in front of this eye, and I just push it with my thumb, and I just cut in there 4 or 5 times, and knowing cedar, and knowing how straight the grain is, I can come right out here. It's like opening a clam, Paul. Let's split that piece right off. And I just keep going down with that.
How many times do you cut yourself?
Every time somebody asks me that question.
I shouldn't jinx you. Okay. So now each wood has a taste, huh?
It does. This cedar is muck cedar. This came from the south side of the Mullica River.
Okay.
You can literally taste the iron ore, how much iron ore in it makes it bog cedar or muck cedar. Muck cedar grows much faster. There's more sap lined between. Each growth ring is a ring of sap. That sap in time crystallizes. That's how you tell an old wood carving or anything made out of wood. The sap has crystallized. If you take a magnifying glass, you can see all the little bumps and things where the sap is crystallized. That shows you age. So I can taste it. That's There's no acidity in it. That's muck cedar. That's on the south side of the Mullica River.
And that's something. Wow, that's knowing your wood.
That's knowing the wood, Paul.
That's it. I've just been in love with the Pine Barrens since I was 7 years old. We would go there on camping trips, me and my friends, and actually try to get lost in the woods. Ancient the places that you've been, unknown but to you where you begin. Sweetwater River drifts on by. I mean, to me, it's like the Pine Barrens are a religion. Everything I've ever asked for, everything I've ever aspired to be, has basically come from the Pine Barrens. Of quiet and of rage, Sweetwater River drifts on by. When I first started writing songs, it wasn't long before I started coming out in the Pine Barrens. And naturally, being so amazed by the woods, the first songs I started writing were about the Pine Barrens and especially Cedar Water Blues. The Pine Barrens, like I keep telling people, is a canvas. And it's just a wide open blank canvas. And every time you come out here, it's a different painting or something else inspiring. Down the Pines is going to show people what happens in this biosphere we call the Pine Barrens. And we're going to feature people that make their livings in unusual and in incredible ways on each show. Fertile this womb that you provide. People ride down a turnpike or ride down a parkway or across the Atlantic City Expressway and they get a little glimpse. But if you look and understand that inside this 1 million acres are plants that live nowhere else in the world. There's the wildlife that's here. As you know, the outside world encroaches in on the pines, we're losing more and more of those species. And it's a shame. But the cool thing is, the beauty is they're here now. And so shall you carry me home tonight. I expect to return to Nashville real soon. I think I'm going to maybe cut an album or two, hopefully this year, in Nashville. And witness the ages gone by. And yet to arrive. It's kind of like an oxymoron doing this show about the Pine Barrens. It's walking on the line because we want to show people about the Pine Barrens and how unique it is. But the Pine Barrens is also my backyard and I really don't want a whole lot of people traipsing around in here. Sweetwater River. Sweetwater River.
You have to think of your feet as one with the pedal.
One with the pedal.
And you're going to be pushing down with your ankle's going to be your pivot, and you push down with your toes. And you have to go slow, because in the beginning, your hands are not going to understand what you're doing. So the first thing that you have to do is to be able to use your feet and not think about your feet.
Right.
Okay? So what's your name?
My name is Paul.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Okay, it's cooling off. We have a nice little
It's
breeze
cooling off.
now.
We got a breeze.
Right?
I'm watching the sheep over here.
Okay, now put your right hand where my right hand is. Yep. And put your left hand here. And little by little, you're just going to pull it through, but not let it break. It's kind of like walking and chewing gum at the same time. See, you're making yarn. Look at that.
That's amazing. How long did it take you to get proficient at
Oh,
it?
the first time I did, I hated it, and I worked on it for 8 hours solid. But I came back the next week to my apprenticeship, and I said, I'm going to learn this.
Yeah.
And the next week I got it. I finally learned it.
Wow.
But I just love doing it. It's so neat to be able to have your sheep and wear them too. It's a nice thing to be able to do.
That's great.
You know.
Have your sheep and wear them too.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's easier to work with two pieces like that because when you put the two pieces of wood together, you're only working with this perimeter,
Okay.
the outer perimeter, to clamp them. So if there's a little curve in here, you know, but,
Right.
you know, and today it's so easy because you can just run them over a joiner or a belt sander, you know, and get them perfect. The glue joints are very tight. There's one behind you there. Can you bring that one over?
Yeah, okay.
It's a little smaller body duct, but you can see This one was glued together, and you can see the results are, it's hard to find a glue line here in places. The schnitzel blunt works really good because as the draw knife goes into the wood, it cuts into the wood, that pulls the jaw down, so it literally tightens itself on you. And it doesn't take...
Now, who made this, your uncle?
My grandfather showed me how to use the schnitzel blunt, and his brother, he was a basket maker. He used to make baskets on his.
So you started doing this in 1948?
Yeah, about the 8th grade in school, you know, getting ready to go to high school, you know, and having the sawmill was unique because I could pick out my wood, and it was just beautiful wood to work with, and drawing my own patterns and all, and Grandpa helped me a lot. He showed me how to sharpen tools. The sharp tool does what you want it to do. The dull tool is the one that cuts you.
Right.
It's been such a great thing, you know, to start as something that was just a utilitarian thing, and the decoy became so popular, and I've taught so many great students.
You sign your work when you're done?
I do. I have a brand that's a signature brand that I usually brand my stuff with, but I like to sign them in pencil. Yeah. And that makes it very personal.
Right. Right.
The old Dixon Ticonderoga #2 saw. That's the best tool that was ever invented. This is where it starts. It starts with what's in your head and in your heart and in your hand and in that pencil to a piece of paper, from the paper to the wood, from the wood to the shape, to the character, to something floating on the water.
That's great. We'll monkey with these lines. I call it monkey, and we'll dress these up. But what we're getting is, at the approach of this Loggerhead Storm, this is all the stuff that's going on with the storm. This is what the storm starts, brings out. So yeah, it's an age-old remedy to keep the predators at bay. In the coming of the wonders and boom, Loggerhead Storm. He called it the Loggerhead Storm. Loggerhead Storm. He called it the Loggerhead Storm. So let me ask you, how did you guys get together?
Oh.
How did you guys meet?
First time I laid eyes on her was love at first sight. She's walking across the village green down there at Smithville. Got this cute little yellow dress on, and her hair just a curly and just shining in the sun. I said, that's the woman for me.
Yeah, well, Smithville had an old village like Williamsburg.
Yeah, okay.
And I was a weaver and spinner, and he was the decoy carver there, and we were pretending we were in the 1820s. So it was a lot of fun.
Dressed the part and all?
Dressed the part, acted the part, and it was such a fun job that we'd all go to work early and we'd stay late. We'd all play instruments, we'd all stay and sing, and it was so much fun. Well, I worked on a loom, and in order to make fabric so that it's straight, it can't rack. And he would come to work early and pull a wedge out of the loom so it would rack. And I didn't know why it was racking, but I had to call Mr. Gary over to come and fix it.
Only person that knew how to fix a loom.
And he was amazing. Like, he carved a wedge and he stuck it right where it needed to be, and it worked perfectly. And I thought he was a genius, not knowing that he was sabotaging it.
That he knew, okay. Yeah. Towards the end of the day, Gary took me for a ride in his 1931 Ford Model A, showing me around the grounds of the property on the Mullica, where his family has lived since 1637.
It's down a long sandy road, that place where only the brave will go, and it's known as the Blue Hole.
My brother built this in the 90s, I guess.
This is great.
And really unique, because what it shows here for the people who come here to the campground and everything is what this meadows, how valuable it was. This salt hay was sold by the ton to great big places where they had plenty of horses, you know, as a bedding.
Right.
And also used, I believe you know more about this than I do, in the glass industry.
Salt hay, they used to pack all the bottles. I mean, you know, they had to ship the stuff with horse and buggies.
Yeah.
And they'd have to really pack it in something that would absorb all the shocks from the dirt roads.
pre-bubble wrap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
This is natural bubble wrap.
It's
Salt hay. It
unbelievable.
was a huge industry in South
Look
Jersey.
how green it is. I've never seen it this green.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Reminds me of Ireland.
Yeah, it does.
The Pineys never needed anything. It was here. It was here. The cedar to build boats.
Yeah.
You know, the salt
it's
hay to
amazing.
bed your horses and cows and stuff down. And that's another thing. The cows love this. They would pasture off of it.
Oh, yeah.
And they would bring them out here in the summertime.
What a great day it was with the Gibersons. I'm going to fine-tune Loggerhead Storm a bit and look forward to getting it into the recording studio. I'll be heading over to Haddon Heights where my old buddy Jim Heffernan has a recording studio. It should be a fun day. Jim and I go way back to when we were roommates in Nashville. He's the cream of the crop. He's played for Joe Diffie and Brad Paisley and has produced and played on most of my albums. Verse, chorus, bridge, and probably 2 chorus. 1, 2, 3. Little chorus, right? Yeah, that would be pretty neat. I don't tend to follow songwriting rules. Very few times have I ever co-written a song, and it's not that I can't get along with people. I think. You know, Merle Haggard said the smartest thing about songwriting anybody ever had said, don't write a song unless you have something to say. I did the bridge.
You down a half step or a whole step?
I'm sorry?
You down a whole step or a half step?
A whole step.
So it's in D.
Yep. I just added this, instead of just keeping it. It's an age-old remedy that keeps the predators at bay. Yeah. Have the bass thumping with it. What would really be cool, we have like a boat.
Well, yeah, you can put all kinds of stuff in there.
You know, you pretty much in your head know what that song's going to sound like, or what you want it to sound like. And then you got to find somebody that knows your heart, knows what you like, knows how to work with you. So when they do make certain changes, and every producer does. Telling me that summer's on its way.
That's fine. Just try the G minor instead of just the G. So
the producer's going to put his mark on it, and he's going to change it. And he might add a minor, he might add an augmented, he might take chords out. And if you watch a songwriter when that's happening, you can sometimes see them gritting their teeth. And you have to be able to trust your producer. You have to. You know, let him take the kid where he wants it, where he thinks it should go. That is going to represent both of you, and that's what a lot of people don't understand about this whole. You know, let's make a record. It's hard to do. That's great, man.
yeah, we just kind of paint a sonic picture of a storm approaching.
Absolutely, that's cool. Telling me that summer's on its way. Telling me that summer's on its way. Next stop, I'll be performing Loggerhead Storm in front of a live audience. I'm Paul Pedersen, and I'm going to take you
Down the Pines.
That's where I'm taking you, down the pines. Down the pines, where cedar water flows. Down the pines, where the sugar sand grows. When the sun goes down and the air gets still, and the hollow call of the whippoorwill sends a chill up your spine, get ready, it's time for the Pine Barrens night. There's some things you should know about the sounds you may hear that just might belong to that creature we fear, who was born in Leeds Point, still lurking here in the Pine Barrens night.